Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Writing Escapades with me, David Rawding. On today's episode, we're going to talk a little bit about self-editing and more specifically, looking for repetition in your own work. This goes for just about any sort of creative writing or work emails or presentations that you're doing. Do you want your coworkers to actually listen to your presentation and read and retain your emails? Then you'll want to pay attention to what I have to say in this episode, which is all about repetition. All about repetition. See what I did there? Eh? We're having fun. Cue the music. Today's background comes from Colorado, southern Colorado, where you've got these rolling prairies and parks, and they've got bison. It's a beautiful place. Highly recommend it. Okay, so your job as a writer is to create engaging writing. Any line editor will search for repetition in your manuscript during their first round of editing. But you don't necessarily need a line editor, because you can find repetition on your own. Repetition is a very common mistake that writers make. There are several forms of repetition. Here's a list of some of the common types of repetition to look out for. I'm talking about repeated words, punctuation, phrases, sentence structure, actions, and ideas. Repetition can be boring, and it can make your reader a passive reader. You've heard the idiom, variety is the spice of life, right? Well, it's true in stories and even emails. Spice up your word choice, your sentence structure, your phrases, actions, beats, dialogue tags. Keep the reader active and on their toes, and they'll grip the book harder. They'll focus on the meeting, and they'll actually read and absorb that tedious work email. Now, I like pancakes. I just wanted you to know that. Real maple syrup, of course. I live in New Hampshire after all. Okay, my point is I like pancakes, but I don't want to have pancakes every morning. Variety, baby. Humans need it on so many levels. Okay, let's dive into an example of repetition. Here's a paragraph brimming with repeated words. John walked to the water cooler and filled a paper cup. With cup in hand, John leaned on the water cooler, balancing his elbow on the top of the water cooler. John put the cup to his lips, drank the water in a few chugs, then threw the cup in the trash next to the water cooler. These cups are waxy, John said as he walked away from the water cooler, smacking his lips. Are you guys asleep? Wake up. It's learning time, baby. Okay, so we have 3 words that are overused in that last paragraph. Any ideas which ones? The obvious culprit is water cooler. In a 4-sentence paragraph, the word water cooler was used 5 times. But since the root word is water, this was actually used 6 times. Next up was cup, which was used 5 times. The last, less obvious usage was the use of the word John. Since this is written in 3rd person, we have to primarily use John or a proper noun or a pronoun to describe John in order to follow along with his point of view. But you can lose or replace several of the Johns in this paragraph to limit the repetition. Let's try this again. I'm going to cut the repetition in this paragraph and we'll see the before and the after. Okay, get ready to be engaged. Here's the newly edited version. John walked to the water cooler and filled a paper cup. He balanced an elbow on the tank. After a few chugs, he crushed the paper container and let it fall among its brethren in a trash bin at his feet. These cups are waxy, John said as he strode away, smacking his lips. So I now use water cooler once, cups twice, and John twice. The reader has other words to deal with instead of the same repeated ones. So this wasn't the most riveting scene, I'll give you that. But if you need to get your reader from A to C, then B scene might be a bit of a transition. But you can still make your transition engaging. So look for repetition like that in your writing, in your emails, in your presentations, during meetings, school lunch notes, tattoos, graffiti, whatever. Another thing along these lines is repeated words, actions, or phrases throughout a longer work. You may know which ones you use. Mine are stopped and just. I'll do a Control F to search out for these words, and I'll find that I'll have 200, 300 of them in a 100,000 word manuscript. They're bad habits. He stopped and gazed. He stopped and tied his shoes. Most of these can be deleted because instead of saying I stopped to tie my shoes, you could just say I tied my shoes, because the act of tying your shoes means that you are stopping whatever you're doing before. Same with the word just. A lot of times I can just read the sentence and then just take the just out, and it reads just as strong, if not stronger. If you suspect that you overuse a word or a phrase, do a word search and see how many times it comes up in your writing. Then try and cut, substitute, and replace these as often as you can. A lot of times you'll unknowingly overuse an action beat. Joe frowned. Jess pursed her lips. Sue tapped her foot. It's okay if it's part of their character, but you'll know if you're hitting on this action too much. Some recent stories that do this very well are Joe Abercrombie's First Law series, where the character Logan Ninefingers repeats several now infamous lines. Or in Robert Jordan's Wheel of Time series, where the character of Nynaeve pulls her braid, or the character Lan calls Rand a sheep herder. Repetition can be done well when it's intentional and serves a purpose, like character development. But repetition in early drafts is often not intentional. A beta reader might catch it, and an editor definitely should. Okay, let's dig further. Repetition can also be in sentence structure. The most common examples of this that I saw as a professor was the to be verbs. This topic can pretty much be its own lecture, so I'll pocket it for a later episode. Just know that to be verbs are often heavily overused in first drafts, and you should seek to cut, replace, and exchange these with other verbs when appropriate. I'll do a future episode on verbs. I'm saying that kind of as a general reminder to myself. When it comes to repeated sentence structure, though, think about how your sentences read. Here's an example. Joe is a slow walker. Jill is a fast runner. They are good friends. This is slow stuff. I will have a nice nap. The structure of these sentences are repeated 5 times in a row. Subject, verb, adjective, noun. You get the point. Mix it up, guys. Mix it up. It keeps the reader's mind active. Next up on the repetition wall of shame is repeated use of punctuation. I used to see this all the time on a student's first draft. I do it too. I know these things and I still mess them up in a first draft. A trick can be great, but when you do it too many times, it loses its effect. It's kind of like saying the same joke over and over and over again. It doesn't hit as hard. I secretly love M dashes. M dashes put emphasis on a word or a phrase, and they look darn fine on a page, but a lot of times a writer like me thinks he's clever and overuses this emphasis. And when you keep repeating a trick, it loses its power. If you emphasize everything, nothing's really emphasized, is it? Speaking of emphasis, I've been telling you to cut or swap repetition, but repetition for emphasis works, and it works well. For example, if you have a parent and they keep telling their kids to go to bed, Jimmy, go to bed. Jimmy, go to bed. Jimmy, go to bed. Obviously, that repetition is emphasized and their volume seems to get a little louder. Or if you want to write some horror, you could have a little kid repeat something creepy for emphasis, and that just adds to the scare factor. Okay, I think I've repeated myself enough. Let's wrap up. So before you send that email, or when you're looking at that first draft, check for repetition in all its forms. All right, well, here's something I repeat every episode. You know what time it is. Shameless self-promotion time. My books are available online, anywhere where books are sold. You should buy them for your friends, your family, your dog, your cat, your goldfish, whoever. And don't forget to do all those things. Drop a like, hit subscribe, tell your friends. You know the deal. All right, that's it, guys. I will see you on the next episode.